Hey there, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 190 is titled An Interview with Dr. Laurel Swinden. Hey there, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I hope that Series 40 has brought you many gold nuggets that you can start implementing within your music business or your artistic world today. I want to give you 2 upcoming events so that way you can jot it down in your calendar. I would love to see you at these opening and closing gala events being hosted by the SBO and Flute 360. The first event is scheduled for Thursday, February 3rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Central Time. This is a great time to network with like-minded musicians from across the globe. You will get to meet the performers, the organizers, and the collaborators through this international festival. Please go down to the show notes, and I have provided a registration link so that way you can register for this opening gala. FYI, only 100 people can attend. So if you go ahead and grab your seat now, then you will be sure to be allowed into the opening gala on February 3rd, 2022. The second event is scheduled for Monday, February 28th, at 7 p.m. Central Time. This is the closing gala where we get to thank our collaborators, our sponsors, our directors, and performers. Just like the opening gala, the closing gala has a registration link provided below. Go to the show notes below and check out this link, sign up, so that way you ensure that you reserve your seat for this special event. I hope that you get to make new music friends that will last a very long time. I will see you soon. Thanks. Hey there. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast episode. Today, I have a lovely guest, and her name is Dr. Laurel Swinden. We're going to dive into her career, and she's going to give you some teaching, flute recording tips. But before we get there, I'm going to just briefly remind you of this wonderful flute festival. Ron Royer is the director of the SBO in Canada, and he and I have come together with other organizations to co-organize this flute festival. And it is going down through the SBO's YouTube channel in February 2022. And of course, the link is going to be provided below in the show notes through your favorite podcast app. So please support this festival because we have wonderful guest artists like Laurel performing on this international stage. And we also have 3 flute festivals who have been in cahoots with us: the Montana Flute Association, the New Jersey Flute Society, and the Texas Flute Society as well. Thank you to all the organizations, the ACWC, and all of the Canadian organizations who have helped support this wonderful flute festival. So without further ado, welcome Laurel to the show. We are so glad you're here.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were talking pre-interview about your busy schedule and being a professor at 2 universities, Suzuki certified, an orchestral musician. How do you do it all?
I have tried to keep a very specific calendar. You know, variety is the spice of life. So I certainly can't say that I have dull moments, but I enjoy all of it. It's sometimes a challenge to juggle the schedule, but I wouldn't trade any of it.
No, you're right. It gets very spicy when you get to, dabble within these different hats. So I just briefly introduced the different hats that you do wear, but could you please dive in a little bit more of your background so people can get to know you?
Yeah, sure. I'm a performer and a pedagogue, as you mentioned, and my heart is equally entrenched in both areas. My positions include I'm an instructor of flute at Wilfrid Laurier University, where I teach flute and flute techniques. And I also teach at the University of Waterloo, Conrad Grebel College, which is the college that houses the Department of Music, as well as some other areas. And occasionally I also teach at the University of Guelph, and I also teach at the Laurier Conservatory Beckett School, which is a prep academy associated with Wilfrid Laurier University now. I teach master classes and give recitals worldwide. I've had some really wonderful travel experiences and met wonderful people through my playing. It's one of the things that I love about what I do. And I hold 2 regular orchestral chairs. So I'm the principal flute of the Stratford Symphony Orchestra, about an hour from me, and also the associate principal and piccolo player with the Scarborough Philharmonic Orchestra, the SPO, which is how I got involved with this festival. And then I do some freelance work as well in orchestras, professional orchestras across Ontario. So yeah, I have both permanent chairs, and then I have the experience of going in as an extra as well, which I really enjoy.
Wow. What a diverse career, right? From teaching to playing, solo performances, you're a recording artist sitting in through different orchestras. You can't get bored, like you said earlier.
It's a lot to juggle and keep on top of to keep the projects organized. But I feel that playing solo music and chamber music and orchestral music is important to inform my teaching at the university level, especially. So it's important for me, even though I have a lot of individual projects, to keep my toe in the orchestral world, because it's important training material for students. They should all be working on excerpts, and if you're actively playing the repertoire, it informs how you teach it as well. So I think it's an important part of what I do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yes, staying active as a teacher, I think, is so vital. Because if you're not keeping up with your own skills, right, and you don't know what's going on in the world around you, how can you inform and guide your students within the current industry?
Yeah, it's hard. I wish I had more time. There's always things that I feel like I would really like to read that article or try out this new piece. And so often in summertime, it's okay, what's the etude book of the month? I'm going to do an etude book a month and be checking out new repertoire, and have the list and the pile of music to get to read through, to say, okay, what's going to be great for my students, and to try to keep up. So it's tricky. And I won't be able to do everything. But I think it is important to find something that you have an interest in to keep current.
Oh, sure. Speaking of Etude of the Week, are you a part of that Facebook group?
I don't know if I'm a member. I think I may have joined.
Okay.
But I haven't I'm an awful lurker in that group right now. I just haven't committed to whichever etude book that they've taken on, although I think, they've made great choices. I'd love to find out more about, I'm really interested with etudes. I love the standard books that they're doing, but I hope maybe the group will investigate kind of whether there are any etudes by composers of color, or if there are any women composers who have done etude books as well. I think that's an area that there may not be a lot of material in, but hopefully there's something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, diversifying the repertoire and getting eyes and ears onto these wonderful pieces by minority groups. I don't think in 180 plus episodes I have ever mentioned that etude group through Facebook. So that was the first time.
It's a great group. It's really, I think it can be really motivating for people. Just
Yeah.
to put up however much of the etude you learned. I think it's a really supportive group. Seems like a very supportive group, and has been good motivation for people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of etudes, is there a specific etude that you're working on right now or out of a specific book that you would like to give a shout out?
I'm kind of revisiting the Kargeller caprices. I've got a few students working on that right now, and I really enjoy those. And of course, the Piazzolla Tango etudes are some of my favorites.
Fun. It'll get the fingers moving for sure. So you mentioned that you are a flutist through the SBO. So you're good friends with Ron Royer. When did your collaboration or when did you start that job through the SBO?
I met Ron through his wife, Kay. As a freelancer, Kay, I've run into Kay on a number of different opportunities and gigs. And I'm not sure 100% how it came about, but my first relationship with the SPO was that they needed, on very short notice, a piccolo player for Firebird. And I came in and played Firebird on Dress and Show. And that was sort of my first unofficial audition for the orchestra. And I guess it went well. And I found that, I was coming in as an outside person and just dropping in on a Dress and Show on a challenging work for the woodwind section. But I found that there was a lot of really great camaraderie among the players. And there was just kind of an instant click that the blend, I was able to fit in really well into the blend of the section and got along well with everyone. And I think that was sort of the start of the relationship of things. And then Ron has connections in the flute world, his aunt in LA, of course, and there's sort of an indirect relationship that my doctoral teacher, Nora Schulman, who is the former principal, retired now, former principal of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, was a student a long time ago of Ron's aunt. And they still have maintained a relationship over the years. And so I think that sort of connection has tied us together as well.
Well, that's beautiful. It's such an extremely small musical world.
It sure is. I try to emphasize that to my students.
Yeah.
The music world is very, very small. And, treat every opportunity like it's an audition.
For sure. Yeah. And for the 360 listeners out there who are listening into this chat and conversation, a little episode drop, I did interview Nora through a past Flute 360 interview. So check that out. And I'll put the link below. She's a wonderful lady, extremely talented, and I just love her energy.
And just such a consummate musician and professional. She's a role model for, I think, most flutists in Canada. And she has the respect of so many people in the industry across this country. There's just no one I know who doesn't have great respect for Nora Schulman. She's really a consummate musician, a kind human being, and just a role model for us in professionalism and collegiality.
Oh, beautifully said. What an amazing tribute. So speaking of our relationships with SBO and, this tight-knit community, I cannot think of a better person to share the stage with on this international stage through this festival, because this particular festival is highlighting and honoring women composers. And you have produced 2 albums, which are titled Celebrating Women and Celebrating Canadian Women, which were produced in 2012 and 2017. And so what an amazing contribution to our community. Thank you for that. And my question is, what were the inspirations behind these albums?
The first one came about in 2012 out of a doctoral recital. I was putting repertoire suggestions or proposals together for my recital, and I wanted to have something outside the canon. I wanted to make sure I included a women composer. And while I had a fairly decent repertoire knowledge, I think like many flutists, when you're just when you're training and you're busy, you default to sort of the repertoire you know. And I just was looking for something a little bit more outside the norm and to bring attention to composers and good music. I've always been interested in good music and sharing it with people that they might not have heard otherwise, or that they just didn't know about a composer. So we always start with Chaminade as flutists. And I didn't want to play the concertino again. And it was for a doctoral recital. So I was looking for something sort of more interesting. And that just spiraled into, I ran into so many great pieces that it spiraled into a spreadsheet full of choices. And then working with Nora, who's a very thoughtful programmer. She takes great interest in that. So because she was my advisor for this recital, we took great care and put together a program we thought that had good flow and for the live recital. And then I added a few pieces for the recording. And that's how the project started. And then out of the process of researching this, there's probably 10 CD albums full of, already in my spreadsheet, not to mention more coming. So I sort of have embraced it as a long-term project that over time, as I can, I will try to add to the collection. And obviously, because I'm a Canadian, I wanted to look at what Canadian women are out there. And that's how the second album came about.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. So since you are a recording artist, and if a student or an amateur or a current professional is really curious about diving into recording their first album, what tips do you have for said individual?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
A good question, but a tough question. I don't know if I consider myself really an expert, but I know that some advice I was given early on was to make sure that you've performed the repertoire a few times before you go into the recording studio. And that can be, in a perfect world, that's ideal because you've lived with it and you may have approached it from some different angles with different performances and you feel sort of settled with it. And that makes the process in the studio much easier. If you really are super prepared and comfortable, that's going to help you in terms of the editing costs down the road, because you'll be able to have longer sections in one take and more takes of complete performances of a work depending on the time. So I think that's one of the number one. Know why you're recording what you're recording. If you don't feel passionate about it, we don't need another recording of the Bach Partita in A minor. There's already so many great ones out there. But if you feel you have something unique to contribute to that, by all means, but don't do it just because you feel that's what you should do. It's the seminal work of what you should play. Find something that you really feel, because you're going to be spending a long time with this repertoire and a lot of time in the practice room. You want to make sure that it's something you really feel strongly about, and strongly about sharing with your audience and with the community as well.
I love both of those nuggets. Oh my goodness, that was golden. So with the first nugget, just to elaborate, you're suggesting perhaps set up a few like live recitals.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, because the first CD came out of my doctoral program, I performed the repertoire and I felt comfortable with it. And then, as preparation for that recital, I did a few lunchtime series where I didn't take the entire program, but I took a shortened program. Or if I was on a collaborative recital, I would play one piece leading up to, the performance state of the full recital. And I think when you've lived with it in that way, it's very helpful. So, book doesn't have to be on a world stage, but just booking some opportunities wherever you can to play all or part of the repertoire before you record it. I think you'll find, it doesn't always happen that way, and you don't always have that opportunity, but as much as you can, it's important.
Yes. And the second nugget, are you really passionate about recording said repertoire? Because time is precious, and right, we have a million Bach partitas Are you recording this repertoire because you feel obligated, or you feel like it's a standard and you have to? Because you don't have to. There's so much repertoire out there. So if you don't feel that connection, then why do it? Life is too short.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't love to play the Bach partita,
Right.
and that it doesn't touch my soul, and that we shouldn't try to still continue to share that music if we feel that it's, I mean, I'm sure we can all think about a piece of music that changed for us, our direction, and confirmed for us why we were going to go down this road of studying music in such an intense way, or make it such a big part of our life, or that, that changed your perspective for you, or something in the repertoire that made you really love the instrument. And it's important to also sort of, that might inspire a student as well. So it's important to balance making sure that students hear the repertoire that has been in our so-called canon for forever, but to say it's not the only thing that's out there. And we should, while we love that, we can also find other things we love too.
Oh, for sure. And I've been thinking actually of your second nugget a lot lately, and it's because of my podcasting world. Are you sharing the information that you truly want to share? Are you talking about the topics that really pull on your heartstrings and get you jazzed? And then, going into the practice room and choosing repertoire for recitals or recording, or choosing which competition to partake in. I've been thinking of that, like, oh, is this obligatory for me, or do I really get jazzed up about this? And so that's my connection, and that's why I've been thinking about it lately, just because of my podcasting world.
Anything that you're spending so much time with, you want to make sure that you feel that it has a contribution, or that it's worthwhile, even if it's only personally to you. But if doing something out of a sense of obligation isn't going to inspire a passionate performance. And we've all had those, we have to pay our bills. We're hired to play gigs.
Yep.
You get pieces of music that you've been hired to play. And sometimes that's a harder road for you to say, okay, how am I going to, I have to find the value in this and try to sell it, or, I don't really feel passionate about this. So it's not that 100% of our time that's going to happen for us, but if that's all you do, and then you may sort of start to, I've had colleagues who just sort of start to question and feel there's an emptiness there, because they're doing what everyone else expects them to do, rather than, the areas of interest that they really want to delve into.
Oh my goodness. I love that. We're not going to end the conversation on that. We have so much more to talk about, but I wish we could kind of end it there, because it's such a high note, and I want to leave people thinking about that and let it really stew, because there's a lot there. So going between your 2012 album and your 2017 album, that's 5 years. That's a good chunk of time. Was your approach to album 1 to album 2 different? And if yes, how so?
That's a really good question. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was dramatically different, partly because I used the same producer, recording engineer. Maybe that had to do with it. I feel like the learning curve of the first CD is always going to be steep. I felt I was really well prepared by Nora Schulman, my teacher, because she is such an experienced recording artist. I actually felt very fortunate going into the process of the first recording, because she prepared me so well and gave me a sense of what to expect. I think I was better in the second CD about taking charge of the time management a little bit, in terms of dividing up time for recording. So one of the pieces on my second CD was through composed sonata, and planning out where you could divide sections to record, because it was unlikely you were going to get the perfect take of a 12-minute piece, at least not for me.
No.
in the first take or just any full take. So planning out and dividing the focus of my energy to say, okay, we're going to do this section three
Yep.
times and then this section three times. Having been through it once, I think you have a better sense of how you work, how your energy works, how your concentration works, and you can time things and manage. If you're very organized and you have a clear sense, it helps your recording engineer a lot.
Oh my goodness. Laurel, if I could like underline, bold, italicize anything, it would be that. Because like I was telling you pre-interview talk, my husband is an audio engineer. And so we get to do a lot of recording projects together, whether it's with instruments like guitar or flute, or just my flute and piano, or outside, for our audio video production company. So we've recorded like videos on podcasting, videos on how to record the flute, just talking in lecture style, right? And so, of course, me being a flutist, I'm so type A where it's like perfectionism, where it's almost stupid, right? And I think I have it in my mind, this weird idea that I have to do the whole thing in one take. And he'll be like, Heidi, now he's more free-spirited than me and more logical than me, so he balances me out well. And he's like, we are going to have a plan. This is what we're going to do. We are going to record the first topic, and that's 5-7 minutes, and then we're going to stop. We're going to walk away and then come back the next day and record part 2. So what you just said was so key, because if you go in with a plan of organization, you're going to be able to break up that huge project in bite-sized pieces. And I think you have to approach it that way, or else you're not going to have fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. Like the process is just going to it's going to wreak havoc on your life if you don't have a set plan in place.
The reality is you're paying a recording engineer and a team on an hourly rate. And, and if you have 3 days of recording booked or 2 days of recording booked in a certain number of hours, if you haven't planned, you could feel panicked and run out of time at the end and have fewer takes of something than you like. And I think maybe that was one thing I did learn from the first to the second CD is do one more take than you think you need, if you can fit it in. But, just like you say, having that plan. And I think part of our mentality about this one take philosophy is that I should be able to do it perfectly in the first take is just the nature of what we see all the time on social media and YouTube and TikTok. You don't know how long someone's YouTube video took. That could have been the 50th take, but all we see is the edited version that is perfectly done. And it looks like someone just threw it off the cuff, and they could do it very easily. But what you don't see, it's kind of like an iceberg. I have a picture of an iceberg in my studio, and what we see is the top, but it's 3 times as deep underneath the water in what you see, and the work and the time and the energy that goes into the product that you see that looks so beautiful and easy and simple at the top.
Yeah, that is a good point. Just thinking of the world in which we live in, everything is so video and audio based. I mean, we're just saturated with media. And so you're right. Like even YouTube, you're like, oh, that person can do it so easily. And you're like, yeah, but it could have been the 50th take. You have no idea. So that's a very valid point. Yeah. So switching gears a little bit from you being a recording artist, let's go into you being an educator. Our music industry is shifting quite a bit. How do you help and what are you talking about, like the topics that you're talking about right now with your students? How do you help your students pivot into this new world that we are seeing change right before our eyes?
Yeah, I think there's some things that stay the same and some things that change. I'm lucky that Wilfrid Laurier is a university that's actually embracing and working with the idea that music in the community and music in life, that the role is changing, and it's just not, and branching out and looking at connections beyond the typical stream of a classical orchestral musician. That's still in there, and there's still a very high level of musicality and artistry and playing expected of our students, and people reaching their fullest potential. But we're encouraging connections and entrepreneurship and finding new directions for their potential careers in the industry, and not relying on any one highly specific area to try to be the best musician you can be and branch out beyond the orchestral excerpts, because as much as someone may be a great player and be very deserving of an orchestra job, there are so few out there, and so many great players who show up to an audition. To me, it's why not you, but also why not someone else who worked just as hard. It's not a matter of someone being more talented than the other. It's just how it rolls on the day. So, and those are things we can't control. So I think we try to branch out and encourage collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration, and try to encourage students to embrace other interests in the musical field that they could be happy doing, and to be as versatile as possible. So I try to encourage their interest in different flute players, different ensembles, that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's really, I try to encourage them to think of their time, their student time, as the very beginning of their professional career. And no matter what direction they go, that they want to approach their interactions with faculty, with colleagues, peers, with a mindset to, these are going to be your colleagues someday, or you just don't know what avenue and what road you're going to go down and end up in. So be very mindful to interact with everyone in a way that you would expect in return, and putting your best professional face forward. So it's not two lives, a student and a professional. It's a student moving toward a professional career.
Oh, for sure. I could not agree more. Like when I sent off a high school student to start his collegiate career, the one thing I said as he was leaving, I said, please, of course, study well, get good grades, absorb, be a sponge, do well. But when you're networking, you need to treat these relationships with your peers as future collaborations for your professional career, because who you meet now is going to they're going to come back in some way, and they just will. So anyways, I'm blabbering, but I couldn't agree more.
You will be remembered. And, I had a full circle moment last night. When I was just a kid in high school, I went to music camp like a lot of kids do. The big camp here in Ontario, Canada, was the Interprovincial Music Camp. And it's up in Northern Ontario, and they had an orchestral and a band program, and you went for master classes, you auditioned for your ensemble. And I played in the orchestra a few years, and I had some pictures of, you get camp pictures of the group. And I was pulling out pictures from something the other day, and I pulled out this picture, and here's me. And here's Jeremy Bell, who's on faculty at Wilfrid Laurier, a fabulous violinist, so out of my league, I can't tell you, just a phenomenal musician. And here I am, full circle moment. Last night, we had our first rehearsal for Pierrot Lunaire. We're going to do a bunch of the faculty at Laurier. We're going to do Pierrot Lunaire together. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just sitting here beside Jeremy Bell. This is a wonderful musical opportunity for me, but oh yeah, we knew each other from how many years ago, too many to say. And I wouldn't be working with him if we had a bad relationship. So and if we didn't remember each other well. So you don't want to burn any bridges ever.
Yes. Treat others like you would like to be treated. Yeah, that reminds me, when I was an undergraduate in Arizona, there was a doctoral student there, Dr. Ana Lara Gonzalez, and she received a faculty position out in New York. And then I went through my different degrees, became a professional. And then now I'm sending my students to her to audition,
Yes.
And that was back, undergraduate years in her DMA program. That was like, we met in 2005. And how long is that? Like 15 years later, now we're still in cahoots with each other and talking about potential students coming into her program, me doing a presentation at Hartwick College, things like that. So you just never know. And those were different tiers of degrees. Like I was an undergrad and she was a DMA student. So it will come back. It will.
It's nice to also be able to support each other too. And the networks that you make can be very helpful to both sides, that you can support each other through your careers. For sure.
I'm not quite sure who said this, so I can't really quote this person, and I apologize in advance, but your net worth is your network, or vice versa. Your network is your net worth. And that's spot on.
That's a really interesting and powerful statement.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot. We've talked about you and your albums, you as an educator. As we're wrapping up this wonderful conversation, are there any last sentiments that you want to leave the listener with?
I would just really encourage, I hope everybody will tune in, because I think there's a lot of passion and heart going into bringing composers to the attention of the world that people might not know about. And it's like anything, that you can find a hidden gem somewhere that you just never thought you would know about or fall in love with. And I think that's what this festival is going to be doing, is bringing a lot of great music to ears. And not everyone will love everything, but I hope that out of all that we present through this festival, that if you find one piece of music that you enjoy that you had never heard before, then I feel like we've been successful and we've done our job. And hopefully that will be one for many people all around the world. And then these great pieces of music and composers can just have more exposure and airplay. So please tune in. I hope everyone will join us.
Wonderful. So the last segment of the show, I do a fun little portion called Pics. Do you have a pick for the listener today?
Oh, Philadelphia Orchestra Digital Concert Series. I got into that in the COVID times and the lockdown last year, and I think they've taken the digital concert hall in a new and great direction for them. They're doing some hybrid stuff with in person now and digital, and they're balancing this really well. But just, it's a fabulous orchestra and great concerts. And also the Taffel Music Orchestra here in Canada, which is a world-class period ensemble. Has some really interesting and innovative programming going on, and they've got some great digital offerings. So I think those are my picks. If I can find some time, I hope to sit down with a glass of wine and tune in and be inspired.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. I want to find time to do that too. Oh, shoot. Yeah, no, I was introduced to the virtual concert series through the Philadelphia Orchestra through the pandemic as well, with my talk with the piccoloist of the Philadelphia Orchestra, Erica Peel.
Love her.
Oh my goodness.
Love her playing. I've never met her personally. That would be my fangirl bucket list. But yeah, she's just a phenomenal musician and player.
Yeah. And a person too. She is so chill, and she's kind of got this like really cool edge to her. Her personality, completely approachable and just a rock star. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have a pick pre-planned or figured out, because I sometimes just try to do this, on whim. So I'm going to pick what's right in front of me. And it's my essential oils. I love using essential oils for different medicinal reasons, but the one that's right in front of me is sweet orange.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Very nice.
very fruity and fresh and clean. And it just wakes up my senses where I have better focus and just overall happier.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my pick for today is sweet orange essential oil.
Great pick.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Laurel, for your time, talents, and energy. The listeners and I so appreciate us just picking your brain and diving into these topics. And I learned a lot. So I am completely appreciative of, the time that you gave us. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for pairing up and teaming up with us to promote this great festival of music by women composers. And I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Hey, Flute 360er. Thank you so much for tuning into the Flute 360 podcast. Please go ahead and follow me through the different social media platforms. This way, you don't miss out on any podcast news and or updates. My social media handle is at Heidi K. Begay via Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I cannot wait to start a new conversation with you today. Lastly, Flute 360 has a YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and check out Heidi K. Begay's YouTube channel. This way, you can see myself and my guests in action. Take care. Let's talk about flute.